Well, we're continuing on with our election review, and I'm delighted to have in the studio today two gentlemen that represent Southern Oregon. We're with us today, Senator Alan Bates and also State Representative Dennis Richardson. And gentlemen, working on a couple of hours sleep each. Combine it together, you guys had a full night's sleep.
I suppose so.
Nice to have you with us. Senator, we'll start with you, and obviously a pretty victorious night for Democrats across the country, and your thoughts about last night.
I think we've got to be thoughtful about this. Certainly the election for the president turned faster than we expected. We thought we might be waiting a day or two to find out. We didn't. I don't see it as a landslide or something of that nature. What it really says to us that if you are in a winner-take-all kind of situation on certain states, it looks like a big win, but if you look at the numbers, it's pretty evenly split across the country. And what it means to me, and I hope what it means to Washington, D.C., because it does mean it for Dennis and I, it's time for us to sit down and start working together. This gridlock in D.C. has to end. And we have to listen to each other respectfully and understand that a person, find the common ground, and make it work. We did that here in Oregon last Legislative Assembly, and we're going to do it again the next one. It's just a matter of sitting down and really respectfully listening to each other.
You know, it was said last night, Dennis, that we spent $2.6 billion, and we're the same today as we were yesterday. We have a Republican-controlled House, Democratic-controlled Senate, and the same president. And how did the numbers end up at the state?
Well, not so well for Republicans. We lost 4 seats in the House, so we're, instead of a 30-30 split, it's now 26 to 34, which doesn't give the Democrats a supermajority, so they can't pass tax increases and those kinds of things if that were even to be considered without our participation. But it certainly changes the power mix. Hopefully we will have learned something from the 2011 to 2012 sessions where in the House, we had this 30-30 split, and as you recall, Peter Buckley and I were co-chairs, and all of the committees had co-chairs, and they had to work together, and we actually did the people's business, and there was a lot less of the anger and the rancor that had happened in the previous times, and so maybe we can continue that. It's a little different on the federal level. In Congress, with all of the conservatives that were elected 2 years ago to the House, I mean, they were sent there not to cooperate and not to find ways to agree on raising money, but just, increasing debt, but just not that much. And so I'm not as optimistic that on the federal level there will be much change, because those people were elected to stop what was going on, and they still have the power in the House to do that. And so I'm not sure how it's going to work out, except that if we're still going to continue going into deeper debt by $1 trillion a year, 4 more years we'll have $20 trillion of debt. The interest alone on that, normally over the last 30 years, interest has been about 6%. It's low right now, but when it gets back to that point, when you're talking about nearly $1 billion of interest a year, $1 trillion of interest a year, that you can't pay that. You'll never pay that debt back. I mean, we have a fundamental difference in philosophy between the conservatives that want smaller government and a balanced budget, and the liberals, which are saying, we're in a serious difficulty, so we need to spend more money and just keep stimulating until hopefully somehow we come out of this problem. And 4 more years of that philosophy is going to be a huge challenge for the country to ever recover from. And so I'm not sure how that's all going to work out.
Well, I want to, again, I echo, Senator, what you're saying. Again, Senator Alan Bates, a Democrat, Dennis Richardson, a Republican from the House, that you guys can get along another session like you did before. It was productive in a lot of ways. You learned a lot. You realize you're really not bad people. You just have different. You have differing ideas.
Alan was my doctor 30 years ago.
You just got differing points of view, and can we figure out how to do all of this? But you passed a budget at the state. We can't get a budget out of the federal. What's the residual effect of the federal not having a budget on the state of Oregon?
It does affect us because we're using borrowed federal money at the state level to balance our budgets out, and this cannot go on. just a comment real quickly about what I think is going to happen in the next assembly for us. You know, we learned last time that we can govern together, and in the Senate where it wasn't 15-15, it was 16-14. We handed out gavels to Republicans. We want them deeply involved in all the decision making. My vice chair of the largest subcommittee in Ways and Means was a senator from Salem, Jackie Winters, and we wanted her in all the meetings we had to go through that budget, and she missed some of them because she had to run her own committee. And that is not the norm for what goes on in a minority situation. And so we're going to keep that going in the Senate, absolutely. And I'm going to try to put some pressure on the House to say, you've got to keep the Republicans in there working with you. It's the way we should govern ourselves.
You made a comment last night. We had you on TV earlier this morning. We had you both on, and it was really good. That was probably before the final gavel came down on some of the counts. But you said something last night on the interview that you had with Steve Johnson. You said, we agree 78%?
I think we agree 70 to 80% of the time. Okay, not 78, 70 to 80% of the time we have the same. When you give us an issue, I believe that about 70, 80% of the time we actually agree on the issues. The question becomes, how do we get there? As an example, what you were just talking about, you can't live with this debt forever.
Right.
So how do you get to the ground of fixing this thing? We don't have control at the federal level any more than you or anybody else does. But I'm hoping they'll sit down and say, look, we can't go on with this debt. So we're gonna have to deal with some entitlements and make some changes there. We're gonna have to leave the middle class alone as far as taxes are concerned, and the upper 1% are probably gonna have to pay a little more. And and we all agree what the problem is. The question is, how do we get there? And we do it without, killing the economy. And we're going off a physical cliff here. And I don't think this do-nothing Congress is going to do anything about it. I think they're going to go in, do nothing, come back in January, and then retroactively try to fix it. But, this huge increase in taxes on the middle class can put us right back into recession. It's really dangerous.
You're shaking your head on that one.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we got the cost, the additional taxes, like there's 21 or 23 new taxes that are part of Obamacare. Those implement over the next 2 years. We have the Bush tax cuts. Those expire. You can call them whatever you want, but it means taxes are going to increase. You have just a number of things coming together that are all detrimental to an economy, and so it really does hurt.
I had John Gizzi on from Human Events. He said that part of the compromise probably will be the extension of the Bush tax cuts. You think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I think what's going to happen, see what you think. The Democrats in the Senate and the President are going to have to sit down with the Republicans in the House and work out a compromise in this thing. And it'll have to be, something about tax cuts, something about entitlements, and somewhere in between there, they've got to find that 70% of common ground. And if they don't, if they just, if Republicans just say no, or Democrats lock up on entitlements, we can go off this cliff and go back into recession. And we'd lay it back at their feet if that happens. We're barely coming out of this thing. It's fragile. From my point of view, you put a $3,000, $4,000 tax increase on the middle class families, we're going back in recession. What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, well, you said last night everybody was, not everybody, you said there was the addicts of free money.
Well, I said one of the challenges that we face is that when you give people something for nothing long enough, they get used to it.
Right.
And it's like an addiction. It's an addiction to money.
Right.
The drug of choice is money, and we have more and more Americans that are becoming addicted to getting a check for not having to do anything. Even in Oregon, you have unemployment benefits that are 2 years. Well, there comes a time when you quit looking.
Right.
You adjust your lifestyle, and a lot of people quit looking. They say there's no jobs out there. Well, if they weren't going to get a check, they might find something. They might take some work that maybe they didn't really want to do, but learn in the past that when you've got to feed your family, then you've got to feed your family. But it's a lot easier now to just let the government send the money, but there is an end to that money eventually.
I want to look at a couple of the measures, but before we do that, before we go into break, what effect will Obamacare have on Oregon? Doctor?
Yeah. there's good parts about it and bad parts about it. Let me kind of lay it out for you in a really broad sense. What Obamacare does is try to get everybody insured, okay? And it's going to go a long ways to doing that. It's not going to be 100%. What it doesn't do, which I think is actually more important, it doesn't do anything to bring the cost of health care down. And that's why people aren't insured in the first place. It's because health care insurance and premiums are too high because we spend twice as much money per person as any other country in the world. And there's too many people who don't have any skin in the game as far as their health care is concerned, no sense of personal responsibility and lifestyle changes that really need to happen. You know, 20% of the people chew up 80% of the health care dollars, and you know, I got nailed in that by the Oregonian for making that statement on the floor. They fact-checked it and said, oh, whoops, he's right. And we've got to deal with that 20% and bring those costs down. Obamacare does nothing for that at all. Oregon, thank you, Dennis, who worked with me on this bill and was an integral part of getting the bill through, has something called CCOs now, you know, and those CCOs are designed to deal with that 20% and bring health care costs down. And we're going to bend the cost curve in Medicaid by 2 percentage points, we believe, the next 2 to 3 years. And it's starting to happen. We're starting to see some positive from that. So Oregon, I think, is going to do well in this. What I'm afraid of, the federal government has an attitude of no good deed going unpunished, you know. So if we bring the cost down in Oregon, they'll probably send the money to another state that didn't do it. And that's what I'm really actually kind of afraid of. But this is the kind of things that needs to be done at the state level and then picked up by other states. We've got to bring the cost of delivering quality health care in Medicaid and ultimately in Medicare in a way that starts bringing those costs down. That'll help chew away at that terrible deficit we're dealing with.
Do you see it that way?
Well, yes, to a large extent. I believe that we have huge challenges facing us. Realize when you say the goal is to increase the number of insured, if you're not increasing the doctors, then what you do is you have a whole access issue. I mean, in Oregon, we have 600,000 people that hopefully will become insured eventually. Well, where are they going to treat? You know, they say, well, the goal is not to have them go to the emergency room. Well, you're going to have to change something. And so the whole coordinated care organizations, the CCOs, the whole idea there is to try and shift us from a sick care process or system where the providers get paid based on the number of visits and the number of procedures to a health care system where there's a team effort that's working to try and help people be healthier, chronic care, people that aren't taking care of their diabetes, are not taking care of obesity or high blood pressure, or cancer, you know, until it's too late, that they take steps early on so that there will be less expensive final costs as a result. It's an experiment. And the R's and the D's are both in favor of the experiment. I've been promoting it because I know it's easier to course correct when something's moving than to try and do something when it's just sitting, saying it's unsustainable, but we're not changing anything. So at least we're making an effort, and the entire nation is watching this effort.
Yeah, good.
And you think R's and D's can't work together? Listen to what just heard here.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay? We clearly can. We clearly can.
All right, let me take a quick break. We'll come back. I want to go over a couple of measures with State Representative Dennis Richardson and State Senator Alan Bates, both representing Southern Oregon. We'll be right back. All right, we're back with our two special guests today, and the day after the election, and life moves on, and we're delighted to have with us today State Representative Dennis Richardson, who's a Republican, and State Senator Alan Bates, who's a Democrat, both representing Southern Oregon. Well, gentlemen, we had quite a few interesting ballot measures, but I want to go to my personal one that's kind of got me rubbed, and I'm going to be bold and ask you, Senator, did you vote yes for Measure 84?
Hey, remind me what it was again.
It was the phasing out of the Oregon estate tax.
I voted yes on that.
Why?
I believe that the way we have the inheritance tax set up right now, with the huge deductions that you can get for if you're a farmer and not lose your farm as you pass it down to the family, which are there already, and the amount of deduction you can have against it is somewhere over $1 million is adequate. I think we have a pretty good law the way it is.
Did you mean that you voted no then? Yes would have been we're going to phase it out. No would mean we're going to keep it the same.
I voted to keep it the same. Okay.
So you voted to keep it the same. So
right.
Okay. All right. So all right.
I think the way we have our
so you think the $1 million limit on the state level is
adequate. Okay. I'd like to see it hooked directly to the federal one, be exactly the same. We may get there, some may not. I'm
That's
also
$5 million.
Yeah, I'm also concerned that that's a big hole in our revenue, and we're trying to put more money into K-12 and take care of some of the issues in the state we think voters really want. So I thought we should stay where we're at on it, and that's why I voted the way I did.
I'm disappointed you did that, because those of us who deal with estate planning and moving from, it seems like the family's being taxed twice. And the amount of money that would be put back in the system by just spending that money, if it could get into the family without paying these estate taxes, is horrific. $1 million today is nothing in some estates. But
well, I've talked to business leaders that say, you know, I have to plan so that I move out of Oregon before I retire, because it's, well, I can go to states where there's no tax, or, you know, and so that, and then certainly before they die, if their business is staying in place.
But 10% on $1 million, that's $100,000 the family has to come up with to transfer an estate, which most estates are not cash, they're real estate and other things. To me, I'm just mind-boggled why we're in love with taxing ourselves twice.
Well, you know, and to be perfectly clear, if they'd put something on that said we're going to hook up with the feds, do a $5 million or something like that, I would have been much more comfortable with it. My understanding was they're phasing it out entirely. And Dennis, you're right. People literally of high income will often in Portland will move to Vancouver for a year, sell off their assets, and to avoid it, then move back into Oregon. I mean, it's a crazy system. So that probably needs to be addressed. We probably should address it in the Senate and the House, and I'd be willing to work with that. And I'd like to see it changed, but I don't want it to go away entirely. And
the challenge is it's bringing in, you know, $80 to $100 million that of revenue. I mean, that's hard dollars to take that additional hit. I think a lot of people voted against it, not because of the philosophy, but as much as just the hard reality.
And it only affects about probably 2 or 3% of the population. The other 97% want to see their schools going on the way they are, improving, and so it's that debate.
Yeah. It is, and the other,
and
on the other side also is the competitiveness of Oregon. Yeah. When your adjoining states have voted this away, and you keep it, it's just one more reason not to move a business to Oregon.
So again, common ground.
Yeah,
we probably like to see a bigger deduction.
Why don't you come back and put a bill out, and let's just raise it to the Fed level? That would be huge.
I'm happy to do that.
I'm going there.
All in favor?
I'll go there.
Okay, I'd like you two guys to do a joint bill and raise it to the Fed level of $5 million. That's a step in the. That's a compromise.
That's a compromise. That's that 70% thing. Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Moving on. We make laws about marijuana, but now we don't want to legalize it. So what's the deal here?
Oh, you know. I'll wear two hats on this one real quick for you.
All right.
I'm sick and tired of trying to deal with medical marijuana in this state and the mess we've made out of it. You know, we got pot houses ruining neighborhoods. We've got cartels running marijuana all over the place. We've seen what's happening. We got somebody we're going to throw in jail here for 3 years because the police picked him up on a traffic violation with a bunch of pot. We're going to pay for that 3 years. What's it, about $50,000 a year?
Yeah.
You know, $150,000. Washington and Colorado just legalized it, and they're going to tax it.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't think prohibition works. I don't smoke dope. I don't think people should, especially young people. I really hate that because I think it causes permanent brain issues. Alcohol is still the biggest problem in the state for drugs, but the reality is it's here. Let's deal with it in a more reasonable fashion. Either legalize it and tax it and control it. Get the gangs out of it, or at least clean up our medical marijuana laws. They're wide open right now. We need to fix those.
Well, with the state saying no to it, what happens now, Dennis?
We're stuck with medical marijuana laws that have essentially legalized marijuana. If you buy your card, $150. If you have a history of pain, which has been interpreted to mean anytime you had pain in your history, you can have it.
I'm in pain today from last night, so do I get a medical marijuana card?
It could be arranged. There's a doc right here, but I don't know if he's signing them up.
I get a pen here.
Yeah, you want to sign me a prescription there?
What needs to happen is we need to go back and say, okay, what have we learned about our medical marijuana law? What have we tried to accomplish, and what are the unintended consequences? And then we need to rein it back in so that that it's used for what it was intended and not just a way to circumvent our laws against marijuana.
No big surprise on the casino things going down, especially when the company pulled out, so that's no biggie. But Measure 79, the real estate transaction tax or fees, apparently passed. Your thoughts on that, Dennis?
Well, there was over $1 million put into it by the realtors.
Yeah.
They wanted to assure that a tax does not get brought up in the future on transfer of real estate.
Right.
And so it was a preemptive strike. And
it worked.
And it worked, yeah.
And, you know, it's an issue that's been talked about up there. Every session we go in, it's one of those things that comes up. They want to put something in to stop that tax from going through. And the other people want to put the tax in, and they always got it keyed, of course, to, you know, good things, you know, low-income housing or something. I understand what the realtors want to do, and frankly, I voted for it. If nothing else, I'm tired of the debate, okay? Mm-hmm. It's not a lot of money, and I thought the realtors were asking for something that was reasonable.
Good.
And so we voted it through. Here's a nice aside for you. You'll love this. You know, what, the company that put that great commercial together, the man and woman sitting there,
yeah.
Mark Hass. Senator Mark Hass. I saw him doing this business. Morning. Yeah, business, still business, you know.
Okay, there you go. All right, let's come home a little bit. We're not doing well with our employment rate here in Jackson County, and you represent both houses here. What can we do, gentlemen, to get people back to work in Southern Oregon?
You know, I wish we had more control over that. The honest truth is there's things we can do and we should do. And we've talked about some of those things already. We'll do everything we can to make that happen. We talk a lot about getting rid of regulations, and we need to keep working on that. As an example, we had a committee working on simplification in healthcare, prior authorizations and paperwork. And frankly, that didn't go anywhere we wanted to. We gave the bureaucrats 2 years to figure that thing out, and they came up with nothing. And Tim Freeman and I are just fed up. Tim's a good, God-fearing Republican from Douglas County, as you may know, great guy. He and I are going to sponsor a bill that says, we're done. We're cutting, here's what you can do. These are the only things you can ask for, and that's all information you get, and all the rest of this regulation goes away. You know what I'm talking about. You know, as an example, mental health care workers here in the state spend about 60% of their time doing paperwork and 40% of their time seeing patients. That's going to go away next time. And I think you got to go right down through all the regulations and start doing that. And we're going to do it in health care. Other places should be doing it in construction and environmental issues and right down the line. We just have so many bureaucratic regulations that have been piled on, layered on year after year. That's something I think we can do to help out.
So administrative oversight, you know, we had that in a bill several years ago, and it fell flat, which was a surprise to me. So are you saying now that you legislators are willing to poke your nose in these agencies and take a look?
I think we have to. I think we have to. We're in a tough spot here. Okay? Mm-hmm. And it's not just the state. You know, city and county do a lot of this stuff too. Yeah.
It's a two-edged thing, a two-prong approach. One is you remove the barriers. The other is you look at what your assets are. And with Bramo going to be manufacturing electric motorcycles in Southern Oregon, it's an ideal time to say, okay, what are the associated businesses that could also benefit from that kind of technology or supply that technology, and then you build clusters. And so we need to actively be soliciting those businesses that Bramo will be dealing with or that would benefit from Bramo's technology to try and bring them in so that we can expand on a cluster and make Southern Oregon a real focal point for electric manufacturing.
Let's see how much time I got. Oh, quick question. What can we do to take a second look at forest management? Your thoughts, Alan?
Unfortunately, it looks like that at the federal level, Schrader and Walden's attempts are not going to go anywhere. They've really made a good effort at it. The governor is putting together a group right now to look at this and come forward with suggestions and a plan. That was successful in health care. That's the process we used. I'm hoping the same process will work for this one. Again, it's going to be something we have to take to the feds and get them to move on. This idea of permanently locking up our forests, not taking care of them, not logging in an environmentally appropriate fashion is just not going to work for us. We've got to open those woods up, and we can do it in a way that to make everyone comfortable. We had some little nuggets of it getting started now, But when I talk to people like Murphy and Boise Cascade, what they're most concerned about is having a steady stream of material coming out of the woods. They got to have some certainty about their supply. You know, you put $20–30 million into a mill, that's a 20-year payoff. You got to have something coming in for the next 20 years, and that's something we have to change.
That's right. There is some movement being made. We can learn from experience, and just ignoring our forests has not served us well, regardless of where you're at on the spectrum, because when you have a forest fire and it just devastates, right. I mean, the amount of carbon going into the sky is not good, and the loss, and then the failure to be able to harvest after the logs are even burned. It just makes no sense. So what there is taking place is this view by the left and the right that we need to make sure our forests are not overly congested. You have an acre with maybe 1,500 trees. 150 years ago, there would be between 35 and 75 trees. And so we can do thinning that will help.
Well, gentlemen, thank you. I know you're both working on just a few hours sleep. Thanks for your time. And I'd like to put forth that you put the Happy Family Bill in this legislature, raise those estate tax benefits to $5 million, meet the Fed. We'll call it the Happy Family Bill. Let's push it, okay? Push it forward, and I'll come up and help you run it. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, God bless you both. All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.